Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Mem Beis Amud Beis. 13 lines from the bottom. The Mishnah had stated if a person has a pillow with money on top and he wants to use the pillow on Shabbos, he may shake the pillow so the money falls off, a form of tiltul min hatzad. Our Gemara now shares with us another form of tiltul min hatzad. Says the Gemara Amar of Oshaya, Shochach arneki b'chotz, if a person forgot a money pouch in a chotzer before Shabbos, which is muktzah, meiniach aleh kikar oitinok umetaltala. He may place the money pouch underneath a kikar, a loaf of bread, or a child, which is non-muktzah, and he then may carry them out. In other words, the sages had made a special dispensation, a special kula, for a person not to have a monetary loss, and therefore they said that a person can take, in this case, the arniki, which is muktzah, and he can use it as a tray to then carry something that is not muktzah, whereby it's only an accessory to carry something that is primarily what he wants to carry out. Says the Gemara, Omer Rav Yitzchok shochach leveina bechotzer meiniach ala kikar or tinkum metaltala. Rav Yitzchok says even a bigger chiddush, that even a leveina, a brick which is less of a monetary loss, one can take that brick and put it underneath a kikar and tinok and carry the kikar and tinok out, using again the brick as a tray, as a way, an accessory to carry the primary thing that he wants to carry, namely that non-muktzah item. Rav Yehuda bar Shilo Rav Asi Pam Acha Shachachu Diskiya Melea Melos Besartia. One time they forgot a leather pouch that was filled with money in a sartia, in a public domain. Ubo v'shalo as Rabbi Yochanan, they came to ask Rabbi Yochanan what to do. V'omar lo, and he said to them, Heinichu alei kikar tinok v'tiltiluha. Place a kikar tinok on top of this money pouch, of this leather pouch that's filled with money, and then carry the kikar tinok out. In other words, here not only is there an issue of tiltul, which allows him to metaltel, but since it's a public domain, he allowed them to then go pachos midal and amos in the Rishus Harabim. Mar Zutra stated, Hilchasa kikol hanishmaitza b'shocheach. All that we are saying now, that a person can use a mutter item, for example, a kikar or tinok, to then carry something that is a muktzah item, when there's going to be a monetary loss, that's only if he was shocheach, he forgot the item. So b'diavad, he can then go ahead and metaltel al yidei the kikar tinok. Rav Ashi Amar afilu shochach nami loy. Rav Ashi argues and said, no, even if he were to forget a monetary item that he could then have a loss from, he can still not use this heter of kikar or tinok. V'loy amru kikar or tinok ela lemeis bilvad. They only allowed one to use this heter of being metaltel a muktzah item, ayde kikar or tinok, if the muktzah item was a mace, because of kavod habrios. Abaye monach kapo akifi. The Gemara now tells us that Abaye, he took a spoon and he placed it on top of a bundle of wheat. Rava monach sakina abar yoina umetaltela. Rava, he took a knife and he placed it above the yoina and was metaltel the yoina with a knife as a kikar tilak. Omar Rav Yosef, the Rebbe Rav Yosef Abaye and Rava said, Kama charifa shmaitze dardiki. How these children, referring to Abaye and Rava, are thinking to be charif in their teaching. Eimer de Omar Rabbanan b'shoicheach. When did the Rabban say this special kula? When a person forgot. Lechatchila mi Omar. But to do this lechatchila, they never said such a heter. Omar Abaye said, Ilav the Adam Choshev Ana. If I wasn't a distinguished personality, then Kipa Akifi Lamali. Then why a Kappa Akifi Lamali? Why would I need to put a spoon on top of a bundle of wheat? After all, the bundle of wheat is fitting to be leaned upon. One can sit on it, and therefore it's not even a muktzah item. And therefore I only did it as a chumrah that people should not learn from me to take other things that they will carry that would be muktzah on Shabbos. Omar Rava said similarly, Ano ilav da adam chashuv ano. If I wasn't a distinguished personality, sakina bar yona lamali, why would I put a knife on top of a bar yona to carry out the bar yona? Ha chazi le'umtza. Behold, it's fitting to be eaten raw, and therefore it's not even muktzah. I only did it that people should not learn from me to then carry things that are muktzah. So I did a ayidei a kikar v'tinok, ayidei the knife. The Gemara now makes a diuk. The only reason why Rava said that it's going to be mutter to go ahead and metaltel the bar yoina is because it's fitting to be eaten raw. But if it was not fitting for human consumption, then not. Ask the Gemara, does that mean to say that Rava ascribes the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that which was initially made for human consumption before the onset of Shabbos, and then became only something that's going to be fitting for animal consumption, is a form of muktzah? The Omar Rava, how could that be? Rava stated the Shamei to his Shamish, Tavu li bar avza, v'shadi ma'aya l'shunra. He says to his Shamish on Yantif, he says, roast for me this goose, and take its innards and throw it to the cat. So you see over here that he was not concerned that which was initially fitting for human consumption, that only became then fitting for an animal, is muktzah, because he said to his shamish to go ahead and throw the innards to the animal, to the cat. We're on top of Kuf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara, no, Hasam, there it's different. Kivan the Misrach Daita Ilave Me'esmo. Already on Erev Yantif, Rava knew that since we're not going to eat the innards of the goose on Yantif, because it's not something that we would normally eat on Yantif, we would eat better foods on Yantif. Therefore, if I don't go ahead and use it for an animal, in this case a cat, it will become disgusting. So he already had in advance prepared it for animal consumption. So therefore, it wasn't a form of muktzah, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Hachanami mistaber de Rava Rabbi Yehuda svirle. It's also mistaber to say that Rava indeed ascribes to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda of muktzah. The Rava expounded the following: Isha lo tichanes lebeis ha'etzim lito mehen ud. A woman should not enter a place where there is wood on Yantif to take a wooden spit, because that she wants to use as a kli, but that wood is designated for firewood, and therefore to use it as a kli is muktzah. V'oid, and further, shenishbar v'ud shenishbar osir lahasikoy b'yantif. This wooden spit that broke is osir to use as firewood on yantif, because since initially it was a kli, therefore, when it loses its form as a kli, then you cannot use it as firewood, because now it's a new form. It's considered to be noilad, a new entity. Because you can only use those kelim as firewood, but if it breaks, then you cannot use it, because then it's no longer the same thing it was before. It's a form of noilad, of a new entity. Shma Mina, therefore we can derive indeed that Rava ascribes the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda of muktzah. Our Gemara now brings the final mission in the parak discussing muktzah. Beishamai oimrim ma'avirim me'ala shulchan atzamos v'klipin. After a person finished with a meal, according to the gears that we have in front of us, Beishamai that says you can remove those soft shells from the nuts, as well as those soft bones, and feed it to animals. In other words, you can move it with your own hands because they're fitting for animal consumption. Beis Hillel says that you cannot remove it with your hands, but you can go ahead and pick up the tavla from beneath it and remove it that way. In other words, Beis Hillel, the way we have it in front of us, states that since it was initially for human consumption, these are only the klipois and the atzamos that are left over, which are not fitting for a human to eat. They're only good for animal consumption. They're now a problem of noilad, an issue of muktzah now. So therefore, you cannot metalta biyadayim. The Mishnah goes on to say, Ma'avirim milifnei hashulchan perurin pochas mikazayis. One may remove perurin, the crumbs that are less than a kazayis, v'seyar shel afunim v'seyar adoshim, as well as the pea pods and the lentil pods, he can remove those also with his hands, because according to the Shita, they're not muktzah because they can be given to animals to eat. The Mishnah now changes gears and says, once we're talking about clearing off after a meal, so now we usually clean the table with a svog, with a sponge. Says the Mishnah, svog im yeshlo or beis achiza mekanchin bo. If a sponge has a handle that's made out of leather, then if you can slowly and carefully then use the sponge, it's not a problem. You can mekanchin bo, you can wipe away the table with it. However, v'im lav ein mekanchin bo, but if it doesn't have this leather handle, then you'll go ahead and squeeze out when you're using that sponge, and therefore melach of schita. Ben kach u ben kach nitel b'Shabbos ve'eno mekabel tuma. However, the Mishnah concludes and says that if it's dry, whether it has a handle of leather, it doesn't have a leather handle, then it's not muktzah because it's a dry sponge. It's a kli. However, in regards to tuma, it's not considered to be a kli because not one of the materials that the Torah says is considered to be a kli for tuma and tahara. Says the Gemara Amrav Nachman, Onu ein lonu ela beis Shammai Rabbi Yehuda beis Hillel Rabbi Shimon. We have a Masara that indeed it's beis Hillel that is mekil in regards to muktzah like Rabbi Shimon, and it's beis Shammai who is machmir in regards to muktzah like Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, we have to change the gears in our Mishnah, that which it states that you can remove the klipos and atzamos with your hands, that's beis Hillel. Because even though it was initially going to be food, and it was a leftover food that can now only be consumed for animals, so beis Hillel says not a problem of noilad. You can go ahead and use the food by giving it to animals, and therefore you can remove it with your hands as well. Says the Gemara, now quoting the Mishnah, Ma'avirim mifnei shulchan perun, you can remove also those perun that are even less than a kazayis. Messiah le Rabbi Yochanan, this supports the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan. Dom Rabbi Yochanan perurin she'ein bohen kazayis also la'abdim biyad. Rabbi Yochanan says that if you have peruin, you have the crumbs that are less than a kazayis, you can't destroy them with your hands. Over here we see that the Mishnah stated ma'avirin es ha-peruin, as opposed to using the lashon of zarkin, of throwing them out. So you see that indeed the Mishnah is a support for Rabbi Yochanan that says you cannot ma'abe biyadayim. The Mishnah also said seyar shel afunin, the pea pods and the lentil pods, since they're fit for animal consumption, according to the Shita of Beis Hillel, we just said, you can go ahead and move them with your hands. Mani asked the Gemara, who's the author of this Mishnah? Rabbi Shimon. This is Rabbi Shimon. Because it states, the lesle muktzah, Rabbi Shimon does not hold a muktzah, and therefore, that's why over here, there's no issue of noilad according to the Shita, and you can give it to the animals. That's why you can go ahead and move it with your hands as well. Ask the Gemara, Ema Seifa, but look at the Seifa of our Mishnah. Svoig im yesh lo beis achiza mekanchin boy v'im lav ein mekanchin boy. Our Mishnah states that if you have a sponge, and only if it has a beis achiza of leather, can you go ahead and carefully go ahead and use the sponge by mekaneach the table. Otherwise you cannot. Also, Rabbi Yehuda, this goes according to the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, the Omar Davash Ein Miskavin Aser. The Davash Ein Miskavin Aser, because if a person is using such a sponge, he doesn't want to go ahead and be soichet, and yet we're saying that it's Aser if it doesn't have a beis achiza of an or. So l'chara, this is a steer to what we said before, that the shita that we're talking about over here in the Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon, who does not hold a muktzah, because here in the Seifa, we're clearly saying this is according to Rabbi Yehuda. Answers the Gemara, Beha afilu Rabbi Shimon moide. In regards to the sponge, even Rabbi Shimon would be moide, that if it does not have a leather handle, it would be osir. You cannot mekanchin with it. Da Abayi ve'Rav Damar Travayu moide Rabbi Shimon pesik reisha. That even Rabbi Shimon agrees that when it's a psik reisha, that in this case, that if you don't have a handle, then you will for sure being soichet, and therefore it's asr. It's only when you have a handle, you're careful to then do it lightly, using the sponge lightly. So even if it does indeed soichet, then it's a davar she'ein miskafin. But again, if you do not have the handle, then even if you don't have kavana, the psik ratio makes it as if you do have kavana and it's osir. The Gemara now brings other items that are muktzah. Hani gar'inin detanre armayasa, shari letultulinu, hoya v'chazin agav imon. Here it states those pits that are found in the tamarim of armayasa, those are shari because they're shari l'tetaltel, to move them on Shabbos, because since those are attached to the meat of the tamarim, they're of poor quality. Therefore, already from the beginning, they're going to be used for animal consumption, and therefore there's no problem to metaltel them biyadayim. Also, however, in the Persian, which are high quality types of dates, those, if you're left over with the pits, those are osir, those are muktzah. Shmuel metaltel lahu agav rifta. It says over here that Shmuel, he put them on a piece of bread, and he was metaltel them from the piece of bread. A tiltu minatzad. Shmuel l'taimei, and it says Shmuel according to his own reasoning. Da'omar Shmuel oise adam katzarkoi bepas. A person can use pas with all of his needs. It's not considered to be a degradation of the pas that he's using. So long as the pas does not get ruined, in this case it doesn't get ruined, you can use it still with other things, either to eat, if it's too disgusting, you can use it to cook with, and therefore you can metaltel the pits that are on top of the pas. Rabba metaltel luhu agav lekana demaya. It says that Rabba, he would spit the pits into a bucket of water, and then metaltel the bucket by then going ahead and removing the pits that way. Rav Huna bereid Rav Yoshua oviluhu kigraf shel re'i. Rav Huna bereid Rav Yoshua would then pile up by spitting out enough pits so that there was enough of a pile of pits to be considered to be graf shel re'i. It would be considered to be abominable, disgusting, and therefore he would then remove it afterwards with his hands. Omar Rav Ashi la'meimar. Rav Ashi said to Ameimar, who seemingly agreed with this shita of making a graf shel re'i, and Rav Ashi asked him, "V'chi oisin graf shel re'i lechatchila?" Granted, if it was already in a situation that it was disgusting, that already there was a situation where something was there was soa or something like that had to be removed, fine. So then the Chacham allowed you to metaltel it. But to then make a situation that will cause graf shel re'i, lechatchila, says Rav Ashi, who said that's mutter? Going back to the dates, the Gemara now says, when you have the pits, Rav Sheshes, zorek leil bilishne, he would throw with his tongue. Rav Papa, zorek leil achore hamita, Rav Papa would throw it behind his bed. Here it's not clear whether it's with his hand or with another item, if you just spit it out. Amrei alov al Rabbi Zachariah ben Avkulis. It says about Rabbi Zachariah ben Avkulis, shahaya machzir ponav achrei amita v'zarkan, that he would turn his head and he would throw the pits behind his bed. Hadran aloch noitel odom es bin noi.